Assalamu alaikum, grade 7s. Today we're doing equivalent forms of the functions and relationships that we've been doing for the input and output tables, and I'll show you what this means in a diagram, right? So here's our box. So we have a machine that we are slotting some numbers into it, and then we're doing something to that machine. Remember, we have a formula, and then it gives us an output value where we're getting numbers coming out. So what we need to do is we need to look at this input and output machine, and we need to take the first example, number 2. Number 2 went in and it came out as 0. So what did we do to number 2 to get to 0, right? Then number 5 went in. We did the same process to number 5 that we did to number 2, but number 5 came out as 3. Then we put number 9 in. What did we do to number 9? And it came out as 7. And then we put number 10 in. We did the same thing to number 10 and it came out as 8, right? So we just have to test it and see. And if we're looking at this one here, we're looking at 2 and what happened to 5 and 9 and 10, we can see that all our answers are minusing 2. So what we've done here is in this machine here, we've minused 2 from the number. So we put the number in, 2 in, we minus 2 and we got an output of 0. So input, your function, and your output was 0. Then 5 minus 2 and your output was 3. 9 minus 2, so your output was 7. 10 minus 2 and your output was 8. Remember, this always stays the same. It's the function that the machine does. It's the same thing that it does all the time, but the x and the y values change. So what happens is when we're writing a formula, we call these numbers x and we call these numbers y, right? So then we have to write it in different ways, right? So now we're trying to communicate the work done by the machine in different ways. And when we say equivalent forms, it means that they mean the same thing, but they're just in different forms, right? So let's see the first one. The first one is saying we must write it verbally. So verbally means we must actually write a sentence in English to describe to somebody. So if you're talking to your younger brother or sister, you need to tell your younger brother or sister what is happening in this machine here, right? So we're going to describe the relationship in words. Input subtract 2 equals to the output. So remember, this is my input or my x, and this is my output or my y. Okay, so this goes into the machine and something happens to it and that comes out, and this is my rule or my formula. Okay, so the input number is going into the machine, we're doing something to it, and then we're getting an output. So how do we write it in English? Input subtract 2 equals output, right? That's the first step. Okay, that's number 1. Then we have number 2. We have a flow diagram, and we're used to doing the flow diagram. It's easy, right? Can you see here? Here's my rule. Okay, I've written my rule as -2. I've written my x or my input values, and we have those lines showing each number. And remember, this one is input as 2, -2, and then that's the output as 0. 5 minus 2, your output is 3. 9 minus 2, your output is 7, and 10 minus 2, your output is 8, right? Okay, then that's the second way, and we call it a flow diagram. So the first way was we're writing a verbal sentence. The second way is that we're drawing a flow diagram. So we're drawing all equivalent forms of what is happening in this machine here, right? So number 3, we can put it into a table. We've done all of these before, right? So we have our input number, which are these numbers. So look there, 2, 5, 9, and 10. So we've written x on the top, and then y is your output number at the bottom, right? So now your rule goes from this side down to that side. So from the top of the table to the bottom of the table, right? And what we're doing is we're minusing 2 all the time. So 2 minus 2, I'm coming to 0. 5 minus 2, I'm coming to 3. 9 minus 7, 9 minus 2, I'm getting 7. And 10 minus 2, I'm getting 8, right? So that's the third way of writing that. So all 3 of them are equivalent forms of writing what is happening in this machine. Okay, so number 4 means we have to write a formula. Now a formula means what is happening to the x and the y. We're saying x right? Minus the 2 is equals to y. Okay, so how do we write that formula down from here? We're finding that x minus the 2 is equals to the y. So we've got x minus the 2 is equals to the y. If I test my formula, right, and if I put any value for x in there, so I'm now, for the first one, I'm making x2, right? So I've put in my first number for x. Minus 2 is equals to y. 2 minus 2 is 0. So y is 0. It means that I've got it correct and my formula is correct. I can test my formula to check it's correct. So that's the fourth way that we can write. We can say x minus 2 is equals to y to describe what is happening in this machine. Then the fifth way is we can write a number sentence. Use numbers and operations to show how each input value comes on the output value, right? So then we're saying 2 minus 2 is 0. So we're actually writing it in numbers here, right? Remember this one here, we were writing it in words. This one, we're writing it in numbers. So 2 minus 2 is equals to 0. 5 minus 2 is equals to 3. 9 minus 2 is equals to 7, and 10 minus 2 is equals to 8. We're not using any variables, okay? The formula has, this one here, it has numbers. And remember, we did variables, things that can change, and variables, and number sentences have only numbers. Okay, and this has only words. So now there's 5 types. So if they give you the one question and they ask you to write it in different ways, you have to be able to describe it verbally. You have to draw a flow diagram. You have to be able to put it into a table. You have to be able to write the formula, and you're going to have to be able to write a